The Roaring Twenties, a time of rising stock prices, shorter skirts, and this new noise called jazz. Better hide the booze, because God forbid you're not yourself next time you see an ankle while being drunk. What a time to sell cars, so why not go nuts by introducing a bunch of new brands? Welcome everyone to episode 78 of the Automotive History Series, where we're going to take a look at General Motors' junior companion brands. Especially the second part of the 1920s saw a rise of economic growth. The horrors of the First World War were slowly forgotten and the Second World War had yet to be invented. Especially the USA experienced economic prosperity with a rising lower and middle class. During this time, the role of the automobile also changed. It was no longer a toy for the rich, but accessible for the everyday man. One company that played a huge role in that was, of course, Ford, with the ever more affordable Model T. Not only Ford, but rivaling General Motors aggressively expanded during these years. By the mid-1920s, GM cars were found in the far corners of the world. But here it gets interesting. Both companies had a different approach for reaching the customer. Ford had a car for every man, and GM for every man a car. Let me explain. To put it simply, Ford relied heavily on the Ford Model T and the idea that the average man doesn't need any more than what the Model T offers. It brings you from A to B, and anything on top of that is a necessary luxury. Although the luxurious Lincoln Car Company was purchased in 1922, it was still affordable Ford all the way. But then there was GM, that consisted of various brands, coupled up after various buying sprees in the years before. The idea was that there was a brand for every purse. As much as GM was trying to beat Ford with these brands, the truth is that GM offered no car at such a sharp price point like the Model T, and on top of that, the brands that were part of GM's portfolio all were pretty much the same in price range. There was no clear distinction as the brands competed more with themselves than with Ford. And this had to change. Enter business mastermind Alfred P. Sloan. Eventually president of General Motors, this man gave the automotive world two brilliant ideas. The first one is planned obsolescence. Here you need to buy a new car every couple of years or so because you need it, okay? You just need it. Stop asking questions. Exterior styling became a new selling point for cars. The new models for the coming year were just a bit more modern looking than the year before, but they weren't really all that different underneath. But the neighbors have a new car on the driveway, and would you really want to be seen in an old dated car, huh? Exactly. His second brainwave was the Sloan price ladder, inspired by the ideas of the previous GM boss, William Durant. The general idea is a car for every purse and purpose, so every rank in social and economic standing could buy a proper car that fit their needs, and most importantly, their budget. Through this way, Sloan killed two birds with one stone. Buyers returned each year to buy a newer model, but also stayed within the GM family of fine cars, hopefully moving their way up as they moved up in life with promotions and pay raises. And this ladder is what we're going to talk about. Around the start of the 1920s, Sloan went to work to untangle the cluster funk that were GM's current brands and reorganize them to follow the long-cherished price ladder. After selling the Scripps Booth and Sheridan brand, the General was brought back to 5 brands, the Big Five, which I'm sure you can dream by now, but this Big Five is a little different than that of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. At the bottom, we find Chevrolet, the everyman's car that was still priced just a bit higher than Ford. Then you had Oldsmobile, the lower mid-price brand. Then you had Oakland, the mid-level price brand. Then you had Buick, the upper mid-price brand. And finally, King of the Hill, Cadillac, the luxury brand. But that wasn't enough, because after trying this setup for a few years, the opposite problem appeared. These 5 brands were now spaced too wide in the price range, with price gaps between the individual makes that were too big. The solution? Add more brands. So you just discontinued 2 brands and then you decide. Anyway, Sloan decided that every division would be given a companion make, so the total number would add up to a staggering 9 brands. According to GM, these new marques would not be full-on brands, but companion makes to the existing brands. Kind of like a boutique car label, something of a tryout demo so that you could get used to it and then go for the real deal. Almost all of these companion brands were priced lower than the sister brand they teamed up with. GM reasoned that adding these brands wouldn't be such a big deal. It should also be noted that back then, most brands didn't have a full lineup of different models for different sizes and prices that came in different trim levels like we have now. They usually sold 1 or 2 car models and that's it. By creating extra brands, this was GM's way to essentially build up what we today call a full model range. These companion makes would cleverly use existing parts, engines, and production capacity of the established makes, but were thinly disguised from the sister brands to still make them look unique and give them some character. But come on, this strategy is such a huge gamble. This is a marketing minefield. Entire chapters of automotive history are written by companies that attempted to launch cars that went into the opposite direction that they originally stood for. Like a luxury car maker moving down market for trying to increase market share and either succeeds or fails spectacularly. Or a low price brand trying to reach for the stars and either succeeds or fails spectacularly. And then there is the added risk that you're going back to square one. Explain to me how 9 brands solve the price gap problem and not at the same time create the old problem of brands moving too close to each other in the price range. And then I haven't even talked about the dealer restructuring, extra marketing, promotion cost that is involved with each individual brand. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present to you GM's Junior Companion Make program. GM was destined to go through with this plan and introduce 4 new brands. Mid-level Oakland was the first to receive an affordable sister brand named Pontiac in 1926. Top-of-the-range Cadillac was joined by the slightly less pricey La Salle in 1927. Lower-priced Oldsmobile introduced the Viking brand in 1929, but oddly enough, this wasn't a lower-priced brand but a higher-priced brand. Upper-level Buick was the last to be joined by the lower-priced Marquette brand in 1929. And what is left is Chevrolet that was not given a junior brand. Let's have a look at each of them, shall we? As each of these companion brands certainly had some unique tricks up their sleeve. This time I'm moving through the ranks from low-priced to high-priced. Skipping Chevrolet, we get at Pontiac. That was the cheaper companion brand for Oakland and positioned between Oldsmobile and Chevrolet. Sloan positioned Pontiac to be somewhat of a performance car. That's right. Before Pontiac gained the sporty, youthful image in the 1960s with the wide track drive and the muscle cars, Pontiac was already the hot rodder's favorite in the 1920s. How did they do it? Well, in a way, Pontiac has always been the slightly sporty sister of Chevrolet. Back in the 20s, Chevys mostly came with 4-cylinder engines. Pontiac was essentially a Chevy-sized sports sedan with a 6-cylinder sold under such taglines as the Chief of the Sixes. Moving away from Pontiac and slipping past Oldsmobile, we arrive at the second companion make, Marquette, intended to be an affordable alternative to Buick in an effort to raise Buick's sales. Not much is to say about these cars other than their herringbone-styled grille and rather heavy and planted look, nicknamed the Pregnant Buicks. They were fine quality cars though, built with craftsmanship and came with 6 cylinders based on Oldsmobile designs. Moving away from Marquette and slipping past Oakland, we arrive at the third companion make, Viking. Interestingly enough, this brand was moved upmarket instead of lower price compared to the sister brand Oldsmobile. The Viking was technically the senior flagship luxury sedan for Olds. The Vikings were modern yet conventional cars, but one thing really stood out: their engines. Vikings came with a 260 cubic inch V8 engine. A true all-American engine, right? Not really, considering the 1920s was still the day and age of the straight 6 and 8-cylinder engines. And then there is another thing. It is often said that it was Ford to introduce the monoblock V8 engine nationwide in 1932, but that's not true, as Viking beat Ford 3 years to the market with its own developed monoblock V8 in 1929. Moving away from Viking and slipping past Buick, we arrive at the fourth and last companion make, La Salle, essentially the junior Cadillac. The origins of this brand is quite interesting. GM had hired Harley Earl, back then an up-and-coming car stylist, that would ultimately be the big boss of GM styling, as well as putting a huge mark on car styling in general. Harley went to work to design the first La Salle, putting an emphasis on styling. La Salles were in every respect as luxurious as the Cadillacs, but just a bit smaller and elegant, like a designer's handbag. The man of the household drive a big honkin' Cadillac V16 freight train, and the lady a small and dainty La Salle. As mentioned earlier in the video, these brands were not established all in the same year, but were gradually introduced throughout the 1920s. Around 1930, everything was put well into place and everything was well underway, with rising sales across the board with the crash of '29 and the following Great Depression of the 1930s. This sudden crash, as well as the deep economic crisis that followed, were things you need just after launching 4 new brands. And this crisis had a huge effect. Suddenly, buyers stopped splurging on cars and sales went down. Fast. GM had to react, as operating 9 brands became unsustainable. Let's have a look at the Sloan letter once again and see what happened to the many brands, because some of these have a longer lasting legacy than you might think. We once again start at the bottom with Chevrolet, and that doesn't need any introduction. The brand was saved and remains an all-American icon all the way until the present day. Next up is Pontiac. Now, here's where it gets interesting, as Pontiac as a companion make actually managed to outsell its sister brand, Oakland. In 1929, Pontiac sold 160,000 cars more than Oakland. Pontiac managed to get through the Depression and became part of GM's core set of brands. Initially known as the Sporty Division, that image had faded by the 1950s, only to be reborn again in the 1960s with various muscle cars. Alas, the very economic crisis Pontiac managed to overcome in the 1930s, it was another crisis that killed the brand, which was the financial crisis of 2008. Pontiac was discontinued in 2010. Next up is Oldsmobile. The company already struggled before the crisis, but because of its established brand awareness, it was saved. Oldsmobile would later become GM's experimental division, introducing gimmicks and technological advancements first of all divisions. But even Oldsmobile couldn't make it, as the company suffered from a nondescript and in-between feeling and image in the 1990s and was discontinued in 2004. Then there was Marquette's Buick's budget brand. Now this one is just plain sad. The brand was established in 1929 only to be discontinued in 1930. The cars barely touched the showroom floor as the brand was already cancelled. Although they did manage to successfully sell 35,000 cars in a single year, a respectable number, but the brand cut too deep into Buick and Oldsmobile sales and the brand had to go. See, I told you. Their engines, however, were sent to Europe to be installed in Opel Blitz trucks. And so we arrive at Oakland. As I explained, its companion brand Pontiac handsomely outsold Oakland. Oakland had to go, and the cars were rebranded as Pontiacs. Then we have Viking, the luxury label of Oldsmobile. This one was just as sad as Marquette, but whereas Marquette sold tens of thousands of cars, Viking only sold a couple thousand cars per year. Not enough to justify its existence, and it also had to go. We arrive at Buick. Buick managed to survive thanks to its existing brand awareness and eventually turned into GM's upper-class car division for those that could appreciate the finer things in life, but didn't shout it from the rooftops, like doctors, lawyers, and physicians. Those who did want to show off went straight to Cadillac. Buick managed to survive plenty of storms and is still active today, roughly in the same market position. Climbing further, we get at La Salle. Now, La Salle was actually kept. It managed to get through the Depression. What seriously helped is that it was seen as an economy Cadillac and came more than once close in outselling Cadillac. La Salle managed to last until 1940, when its existence was squeezed by Buick moving upmarket and Cadillac slightly downmarket, leaving no room. But boy, the La Salles are just so beautiful. They were Harley Earl's personal passion project and launched the man's career within GM as a stylist. The brand was discontinued, but the name lived on within the walls of GM's design department. Various styling proposals were temporarily named La Salle before either being killed or released in production form with a revised model name. And on top of the heap, we find Cadillac. Does it need any introduction? Somehow, the brand managed to survive the Great Depression by still selling massive V16 powered freight trains, and later on, Cadillac was the one-stop shop for everyone that had fame, money, and flamboyance, or all three. Cadillac lost some of its shine in the later decades, but it remains GM's luxury flagship brand to this very day. And this concludes our little look into the confusing and short-lived GM Junior companion brand strategy. In retrospect, it's easy to say that the Great Depression was the sole reason to destroy the possible success of this setup, but generally it's agreed that this was an effort with mixed results. Certainly, the Depression didn't help, but as I explained, there was a real threat that all these brands would lead to internal fighting and trying to steal each other's market share, not to mention that buyers can be easily confused about which brand came at what price. There was one success though. By the late 1920s, GM did manage to surpass Ford in market share, a long-cherished dream. But this is a classic case of pride comes before fall. It has happened more than once that as soon as a car company starts to pull overambitious crap like this, a financial crisis follows. Don't believe me? We have GM's companion program right before the crisis of 1929. GM sold the largest gas-guzzling land yachts ever right before the oil crisis of 73. GM tries to conquer Europe by getting on a buying spree and build gas-guzzling Hummers right before the financial crisis of 2008. So here is edsautoreviews' official financial technical analysis using car industry ambitiousness. As soon as you see a car company pull crap like this, like building things like this, sell your stocks. This is no financial advice. And so, allow me to end this video with a phrase I've used many times before. Come on now, gather around, say it with me. GM, will you ever learn? If you wish to know more about GM's failed attempt to conquer Europe, click the video in the top left. If you wish to know more about GM's engines installed in Opel Blitz trucks only later for them to haunt them, click the video in the bottom left.